Okay, so if you watch my video for the last few years, right, you will always know that I always emphasize that the datas are outdated, the datas are not up to date, the market that I am sharing is actually more latest update rather than you look at data. Okay, why do I say so? Okay, so recently, right, I also being asked this question by my customer lah. So I went to do some research. So I'm gonna share with you what I have found and what kind of research I have done and what is the conclusion. And after this conclusion, right, I feel that there's a few things that to me, I will say that I don't know lah. Okay, this is just my personal opinion. Whether you want to say that is this a flaw or not, I don't know. I don't think I don't think I have the 资格, you know, the position to say that this is a flaw lah. Okay, who am I to say that this is a flaw? But this video is really disclaimer first is really purely research and sharing and educational. Okay, so I just share with you what I found and also what is happening in the market. Let's go. Okay, so I just want to share with you first. Let's touch on the HDB transaction first. Because to me, the HDB transaction has the biggest discrepancy and the I feel that if I want to talk about this as a flaw and as a problem in terms of the transaction data, right? I feel that the HDB one is the one that is a little bit complicated and a little bit problematic. Okay. So to those whoever that is working at HDB, to the government, this is just purely my opinion only. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I may be wrong. Disclaimer first. Okay, but this is what I found from my research. Okay. Okay. So what happened is if you go to the HDB, we follow what consumer will do. Consumer will go to the HDB resale price, flat price on the HDB website. Then they will key in what they want to find. Like example, 4-room Ang Mo Kio for the last 6 months and whatsoever, and the data will be out. If you look at the data, guys, in the last column, example, the last column, they will write resale registration date. January, December, April, or whatsoever. They write the month. Okay, so let me share with you what is resale registration date. Now in the market, close to, I can easily say close to 70% of the transactions require extension, correct or not? And most of these required extension unit, right, they will ask you for 60-day submission, 90-day submission, 30-day submission. Okay, let's explain what is submission. Submission means that once you buy the place, you put a $1,000 option to the place. Actually, there's a 21 days exercise period. So you can exercise within these 21 days, pay the remaining 4,000 within these 21 days. After you have paid the 4,000, this is where the submission period date starts to count. So example, if I pay a $1,000, 21 days later, I pay $4,000. Then I put 60 days submission. Means I only submit the case 60 days later to HDB. Why do people do this? Is because to achieve legal extension in HDB, people need to buy first. So when they submit to HDB, right, they need to submit that they already purchased a place also. So they use these 60 days to go and buy a place, which also means that this transaction is being delayed and this transaction will not reflect in the HDB website. When this transaction decides to reflect on the HDB website, right, it only reflects the resale registration date, which is the day it is being submitted. So if we talk about a transaction that is asking for extension, it goes with option, 21 days later, you pay 4,000. Okay, that's 21 days. Then there's an extension of 60 days. 60 days plus 21 days, that's close to 80 days. 80 days can be easily 2 over months. So only when you submit the case, then it will reflect on the HDB pricing or transaction index or whatsoever. So when you look at the dates they use, is resale registration date is in January. So I have customer that told me, hey Aaron, why we sell cannot sell but this person sold in January? or this person sold in December. So I have another system which is only a agent only system. I went to check this person that resale transaction in December actually sold the place off in October or September. They didn't sell their place in December. Okay, this is getting a little bit confusing. I don't know whether you get it or not. On the website, HDB website, it reflects the resale registration date only. Resale registration date is the date where we submit the case to HDB. So that date is written December. But the house was sold maybe in October or September. Why? Because don't forget, remember we say there's a 60 days extension plus 60 days submission date plus a 21 days exercise period. So if you add that 80 days, right, this transaction is actually way outdated. So what we get in December is not units that manage to sell in December. So what we get in December most likely are units that comes from November, October or September. If we look at units in January, January will have more transactions that is related to December, November. Maybe not October because October is pretty far away. So if you look at it this way, right, our HDB data are outdated by at least 2 to 3 months. Okay, if we look at this, this is a disclaimer. I'm just sharing what I learned from the HDB website because they are using resale registration date. So I went to tally a few of my systems. So I have, as an agent, I have different sources to find out transaction prices. So I went to tally and I have a special system that I can find out the exercise date of that contract. So when I went to tally, I realized that a lot of these data today, because how the market works, 70% of the people are asking for extension, and people that ask for extension needs to do the e-submission, extend the e-submission extension date. So by extending the e-submission date, which is also by extending the resale registration date, it means that all the datas, or maybe at least 70-60% of the datas are outdated on the HDB website. Even today, let's not talk about e-submission. We talk about just normal option, then 21 days later exercise, then submit to HDB. So example, this transaction happens in 15 October. Then 21 days later, that will be easily November. Then we go and submit. Maybe we take 10 days to submit to HDB. So this case will only be registered in HDB in the November transaction. So even in a normal case study, normal transaction, the cases are mostly outdated. So for it to really happen in the same month, the unit has to be sold off maybe by 5th November. Because if you do 5th November plus 21 days, 26th November, then we try to submit within 4 days, then the transaction will appear in November itself. If not, HDB transactions are mostly outdated by minimum 1 month. But if you look at the current situation in today's HDB market, everybody is asking for submission delay, 60 days delay, 30 days delay. All transactions, I can say basically all transactions, okay? Because I check my agent's transaction, my team transaction, my own transactions, I can say that close to 80% of the transactions are all outdated. So when they write registration date in January, registration date in December, these units are actually already sold off in October. Okay? This to me shows that it's not accurate, because if I were to really look at what is the real December transaction, I will not see it in the December transaction. I will only maybe see in the January or February transaction. So we will see how it goes. I mean, I'm just sharing with you my discovery, okay? This has not ended. So now we're going to look at rental transactions. Okay, so I went to the URA website to search for rental transaction. I don't want to talk about the private transaction first because the private transaction is a little bit different also, okay? But we go and talk about the rental transaction. If you go to the URA private residential rental contract transaction, you look at the contract, the transactions, they will show the monthly rental. If you click the plus sign, you will see the date. Okay, so this is where the interesting thing comes. For residential rental contract transactions in URA website, they are using the lease commencement date. Lease commencement date. Okay, sorry, a short tongue. So it means that this lease commencement is November 2023, but it doesn't mean that this transaction, the tenancy agreement is being signed in November. It means that the lease is starting in November. But a lot of times when we do rental contracts, right, we rent it to the tenant maybe 1 month in advance, 2 months in advance, 3 weeks in advance. So this is also not 100% accurate because it's lease commencement date. It can be 2 months before they already signed the tenancy agreement, but they only start their lease in November. Then you will see the transaction happen in November. So again, how accurate is this to transaction data? Okay, I don't want to comment, but I leave it to you to brainstorm. To me, I would rather it be a tenancy agreement date because it will be the date that we found a tenant. It shows that at that moment, we found a tenant at this price. It's more accurate than because we can find a tenant at this price, but the lease only start 2 months later. The lease only start 1 month later. So it's inaccurate data to me. So I rather it be like lease commencement date. It should be like tenancy agreement sign date or tenancy agreement date. Then that's more realistic because it's the day we sign with the tenant and confirm and close the deal at this price. You know, the lease can start 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks later. That really depends on when the tenant want to start the lease, ma. But the tenant already signed the contract and decide to rent it at this price at this time, ma. Okay, so this is for rental. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about the private residential transaction. I go to the URA website. Okay, there's some transactions that I have transacted. There's some transactions that has happened that I know. I went in. To be frank, I couldn't see the data. Okay, why I couldn't see the data? If you go to the URA private property transaction information, okay, the website, it used this thing called sales date. Okay, if I am not wrong, the sale date refers to exercise date. Exercise date is quite fair because it's within 14 days. Because normally exercise period is 14 days. Of course, I know there's cases that is 2 months exercise period, 3 months exercise period, 1 month exercise period. There's still certain degree of discrepancy that may happen, but majority of private transactions is 14 days exercise. So we will see the sales date, okay? However, I checked and realized that some of the transactions are not lodged yet, even October transaction, even November transaction. So I dropped a message to a few of my friends. I don't want to say who friend, I also don't want to sabo them. So they told me that this thing is correct, is using exercise date, but we have to lodge the caveat first. So the answer is the caveat got to be lodged before you see on the transaction, URA transaction. Can you don't lodge the caveat? As in, can it be a private caveat? Can. But there's some issues here and there that I don't want to discuss in this video. So you can actually lodge a private caveat and don't allow people to see the transaction on public data. That's possible. Number 2, I asked them, when do you need to lodge a caveat? They tell me that, I don't know how true, but this is what they tell me. Disclaimer first. They tell me that there's no date or like by when, but normally they will lodge before the case completed. But it doesn't mean that, oh, within how many days you need to go and lodge this caveat. So again, the transaction may be already done in October, but until today, January 10, I haven't seen the data appearing. So it shows that there is no exact SOP that must lodge by when, confirm must lodge, can hide or not, can don't show the public or not, can pay more money, can don't appear, can lodge later so that the public don't see it, also can. So these are some of the things that shows that the data is not wholesome enough to me. However, this is like public data. I can tell you that I have a few systems that look at all this transaction data, and I can say that some of my system already reflected what is not shown here. Okay, so I just want the public to understand that, to me, this is outdated data. The data that we are seeing is outdated by at least 1 to 2 months minimum. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of why sometimes I say something but data doesn't reflect, and why I don't really look at data in the data manner, and why I don't actually present presentations using data. There's a reason to my understanding about the market. So to me, at this point of time, I don't think it's fair enough if I were to be very current in my analysis to actually just look at all these things, because all these things are not in-depth enough and they are not in time enough with what is happening in the market today. But of course, as a whole, if I were to look at how this property is performing historically, then I think yes, the data may be something that I can look into. Okay, I don't know if you guys understand, but I spent a lot of effort trying to clarify a lot of people, going through a lot of my programs to tally the different information. So I hope you like this video, because it only takes you 1 second to hit the like button. It might take me a lot of days trying to tally all this information to make sure that I get it correct and find out where is the discrepancy, where is the lag, and why there's all this difference in data. Okay, please hit the like button, subscribe button. I see you in the next episode, and happy Chinese New Year. Bye bye.